The first question that we have for today is I had this thought that all thoughts are a superimposition over the natural silence of the mind. Is this how it can be said that the mind, or at least thoughts, mind being a bundle of thoughts, itself an illusion? Also, sometimes when I close my eyes, I will clearly see an image of something I have been staring at throughout the day, superimposed over the darkness of my closed eyes. Does this qualify as superimposition in the way that the metaphor of the rope and the snake implies? Bhagavan Ramana says that the mind creates the body, and if I personally primarily identify with the Vijnanamaya Kosha, having no real experience of the Anandamaya Kosha, can it be said that everything from the Anandamaya Kosha downwards is a superimposition on the self? In the same way that when I close my eyes, I sometimes see an image overlaid on top of the darkness of my closed eyes, or how thoughts seem to appear and disappear on the surface of my otherwise often quiet mind. This inward quietness was first discovered when I started listening to and reading Bhagavan Ramana's works. By the way, before that, the mind was in constant state of chatter. I am basically asking about the idea of superimposition being a day-to-day experience in thoughts and images that overcomes the mind, and even the sensory experiences that tell me there is a body. I seem to have that exists in a world, but I have absolutely no evidence that this is true, other than that is what the mind is telling me. That is the first question.
Okay. What is real is what is permanent. The only permanent thing in our experience is our own being and our awareness of our being, which are one and the same. That is, I am. We are all aware I am. We're aware I am in the waking state. We're aware I am in the dream state. And we're aware I am in sleep. Everything else appears and disappears. So whatever appears and disappears is not real. It is just a superimposition. So in answer to the question, what is a superimposition? Other than our fundamental awareness, I am, everything is a superimposition. The examples given, well, the classic example of superimposition is the rope that is mistaken to be a snake. That is, the idea that it is a snake is superimposed upon the base, which is the rope. One feature of superimposition never completely conceals the base on which it is superimposed. It merely obscures it, makes it seem to be something other than what it actually is. So when we see a rope and mistake it to be a snake, even when we think we are seeing a snake, what we're actually seeing is just a rope. So we see the rope, but mistake it to be a snake. Likewise, the one thing we are always aware of is our fundamental awareness, I am, which is our being. That we are always aware of. Awareness of other things is superimposed on that. So the root of, when something is superimposed, just like when the snake is the idea of a snake is superimposed on a rope, it is superimposed in the view of something. That is, there is an observer, in this case ourselves, looking at a rope, mistaking it to be a snake. So without an observer, there couldn't be any superimposition. So the superimposition, that is the superimposition of the appearance of multiplicity, is all in the view of ego. So long as we are aware of ourself as just I am, as we are in sleep, there is no superimposition. But in waking and dream, we rise as ego. And as soon as we rise as ego, we project and experience a body as I. We mistake ourselves to be a body. That is why Bhagavan often said, ego is the false awareness, I am this body. That is, this false identification is the very nature of ego. Without identifying itself as a body, ego doesn't seem to exist at all. So, as soon as we rise as ego, we project and experience a body as I. And only in the view of ourself as ego, the one who mistakes itself to be a body, are we aware of other things. So the superimposition occurs only in the view of ego. So ego is the first superimposition because ego is the superimposed awareness, I am this body. That is the base awareness, the fundamental awareness is I am. On top of that, this upadhi or adjunct is superimposed, the body, as I am this body. That is the word upadhi, which is often translated as adjunct. I mean, there's no adequate English word to translate upadhi, but adjunct is a simple way of translating it. But it means more than just something that is added. It is something that is mistaken to be something like when we experience ourselves as I am this body, the body is not merely added. There's a mistaken identification. We mistake ourselves to be this body. So that is upadhi is something that is another thing is mistaken to be. So it's a superimposed limitation. So the first superimposition is ego, which is this false awareness, I am this body. That is on top of that is on the fundamental awareness I am. The false awareness, I am this body, is superimposed. And only when we're aware of ourselves as I am this body, are we aware of the appearance of so many other things. So all those other things are secondary superimpositions. The primary superimposition is ego itself. So I'm just looking at the question again. He begins by saying, I have this thought that all thoughts are a superimposition over the natural silence of the mind. That is, the mind is not naturally silent. The very nature of the mind seems to exist only when we rise as ego, as I am this body. So silence is not the nature of the mind. The reality of the mind, the reality of ego, is the fundamental awareness I am. That is what is naturally and eternally silent. So there is never a moment when there's silence of pure being. The silence of I am is disturbed. Whatever turmoil the mind may seem to be in, underlying the mind is this fundamental awareness I am, which is ever undisturbed. It's never affected in any way by the appearance of anything. So all superimposition is over the natural silence of pure being, the natural silence of I am, and not the natural silence of the mind, because we can't say the mind is naturally silent. That is the very mind seems to exist only when it rises, identifying itself as I am this body. That is, mind is in this context is a synonym for ego, because that is when we use the term mind, we often use the term mind to refer to thoughts in general. But of all, as Bhagavan clarifies in verse 18 of Upadesha he says, Enangale manam, that is, thoughts alone are the mind. But of all thoughts, the thought called I, That is, the thought, I am this body, is the first thought. Therefore, what the mind essentially is just this first thought, I, namely ego. So ego or mind doesn't rise except by identifying itself as I am this body. That itself is an act, that its very rising is an activity. So we can't say the mind is ever perfectly silent. When the mind is silent, perfectly silent, as for example in sleep, there's no mind at all. It's so uh, so long as there's mind, there is activity, there is rising and identification, and consequently thinking and so on. So also all superimposition is on over the natural silence of pure being. And then he asks, is this how it can be said that the mind, or at least thoughts, mind being a bundle of thoughts, itself is an illusion? Yes, mind, that is everything that appears is the mind. Even this world is nothing but mind. That is what we experience as the world, as Bhagavan explains, is nothing but the five kinds of sense impression: sights, sounds, tastes, smells, and tactile sensations. If we take away these five sensory impressions, where is the world? So the world is nothing but sense impressions, and those sense impressions are nothing but mental impressions. So everything is mind. All phenomena are nothing but mind. Just like in a dream, we see a dream world, but that dream world has no existence independent of us. So it's all just our own mental impressions. It doesn't actually exist. And then he goes on to say, sometimes he gives the idea, the example of seeing, and if you've been looking at something all day, when we close our eyes, we still continue to see it. Yes, that is an example of superimposition. But that's just an example. Actually, everything we perceive is a superimposition. It's a superimposition on our fundamental awareness, I am, which is what we actually are. And then he goes on to say, Bhagavan Ramana says that the mind creates the body, yes. And if I personally primarily identify with the Vijnanamaya kosha, having no real experience of the Anandamaya kosha, here we have to clarify our primary identification. When we identify ourselves as a body, we identify all the five sheaths as I. That is, as Bhagavan says in verse 5 of Uludunapadu, Udul Panchakosa Uru. That means the body is a form of five sheaths. So therefore, all five are included in the term body. So we never experience a dead body as I. So we always experience it as a living body. So a living body is a combination of Annamaya kosha, the sheath made of food, in other words, the physical body, and Pranamaya kosha, the life. And we never experience a sleeping body as I. It's always a body that seems to be awake. Even in dream, the body that we take to be I seems to be awake. So long as we're dreaming, we seem to be awake. So in a waking body, there's a mind, Manomaya kosha, an intellect, Vijnanamaya kosha, and a will, Anandamaya kosha. So we identify all five simultaneously as I. So we can't say that we primarily identify with the Vijnanamaya kosha. Sometimes when we are engaged in intellectual activity, reasoning or discerning, discriminating, that may be the kosha that comes to the foreground, so to speak. But all the five sheaths, we throughout the waking and dream state, we experience all the five sheaths as I. And regarding this person who wrote this, saying, having no real experience of the Anandamaya kosha, that is, people mystify the Anandamaya kosha as something unknown. All the Anandamaya kosha is to put it simply, it's the will, what is otherwise called chittam. The will consists of all our likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, and so on, which in their simplest form, in their root, in their seed form, are what are called vasanas. So vasanas are the desires, likes, dislikes, and so on in their seed form. Vasanas means inclinations. So we are always aware of these inclinations. We may not, that is, for example, someone whose mind is very outward-going, they may not notice that their mind is constantly being swayed by vasanas, inclinations, but that is the case. So we are always, throughout the waking and dream state, we are always experiencing vasanas. And those vasanas are what make up the Anandamaya kosha. It is sometimes said, but in sleep, what remains in sleep is only the Anandamaya kosha. That is one explanation that is given, but that is given for people. There are different types of explanations are given to satisfy people of different. That is, not everyone is ready to understand the deepest teachings. According to Bhagavan, sleep is a state devoid of ego. Since it's devoid of ego, it's devoid of all the five sheaves. So the five sheaves appear only in waking and dream. So though that explanation is often given that the Anandamaya kosha alone remains in sleep, that is an explanation that will satisfy some people, but it's not the deepest explanation. And many of us are not satisfied by it because all we actually are aware of in sleep is I am. It's only in the waking state that we describe sleep as a state of ignorance or darkness. That's only from the perspective of the mind in the waking or dream state that sleep seems to be a state of darkness. So to say that that darkness of sleep is the Anandamaya kosha is not a very satisfactory explanation. Well, it may satisfy some, but it's not such a deep explanation. So the Anandamaya kosha is what we are experiencing throughout the waking and dream state. All our vasanas and the resulting likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, they are all Anandamaya kosha. So his question in this connector, can it be said that everything from the Anandamaya kosha downwards is a superimposition on the self? Not only these five sheaves of superimposition on the self, ego itself is a superimposition. On the self here, he puts the self with a capital S. That means our self as we actually are, the pure being awareness, I am. Everything, including ego, is a superimposition. The first superimposition, as I said earlier, is ego. Everything else follows because everything else exists only in the view of ego. So yes, these five sheaves are a superimposition, but the primary superimposition is ego, which is the false awareness that mistakes the five sheaves to be I. And then he ends by saying, I'm basically asking about the idea of superimposition being a day-to-day experience in thoughts and images that overcome the mind, and even the sensory experiences that tell me there is a body. There is a body I seem to have that exists in a world, but I have absolutely no evidence that this is true, other than that this is what the mind is telling me. Yes, all this world seems to exist, but it doesn't actually exist. While we are dreaming, we see a world just like this world. a world consisting of sights, sounds, tastes, smells, tactile sensations. And so long as we're dreaming, that world seems to be real. But as soon as we wake up, we recognize that it's just a mental fabrication. So what is meant by real is what actually exists. Just because something seems to exist doesn't mean it actually exists. The dream world seems to exist so long as we're dreaming, but it doesn't actually exist. Exactly the same with this present world. It seems to exist, but it doesn't actually exist. The same is the case with ego, the knower of this world, the one who experiences this world. Ego seems to exist, but doesn't actually exist. What actually exists is only, well, as Bhagavan says in the seventh paragraph of Nana, Yatatamai Ulludu Atma-sarupamandre. What actually exists is only Atma-swarupa. Atma-swarupa means ourself as we actually are, the real nature of ourself. What we actually are is Atma-swarupa. That is the, the pure being awareness, Satchit, I am. That is what actually exists. Everything else is a superimposition. So I hope I've answered that question adequately. Does anyone have any questions about what I've just explained?
So do we need to always make sure all the seeds destroyed before the liberation?
All the what destroyed?
The seeds.
The seed, yes, yes. Because that is, so long as there is ego, there will be vasanas. And so long as there's vasanas, whose vasanas are they? They're ego's vasanas. So vasanakshaya, the destruction of all vasanas, all the seeds, is synonymous with manonasa, destruction of the mind, annihilation of ego. So it is the nature, that is, the vasanas are not ego. The vasanas are just a sheath, the Anandamaya kosha, but it is the nature of ego to have vasanas. So, so long as there's ego, there will be vasanas to a greater or lesser extent. So the vasanas will be destroyed only when ego is destroyed. So as long as vasanas remain, that means ego is remaining. Vasanas cannot remain without ego. Are there any vasanas in sleep? No, because ego is absent in sleep. Only when we rise as ego in waking and dream, we come under the influence of our vasanas, our inclinations, our likes, dislikes, desires, and so on. In sleep, we don't desire anything. We don't like anything. We don't dislike anything because we are existing in sleep as Satchit, pure being awareness.
Thank you, Michael.
Right. And one thing more I would add to that is that is all this talk about superimposition. Why do we talk about these things? Why is everything described as a superimposition? What's the benefit of knowing this? That is the reason we are taught this, is that there's only one thing that is real, namely our own being, I am. So everything else is just a fleeting appearance. It's a superimposition. It's not real. It appears, but it doesn't actually exist. It seems to exist, but doesn't actually exist. Since the only thing that actually exists, the only thing that is real is I am, if we are wise, we will hold on to what is real and let go of everything unreal. So by the reason we are taught all this is to make us understand why we should be constantly trying to attend to I am, to our own being, because nothing else is real. Everything else is just a fleeting appearance. Whatever we may achieve in this world or in the next world, even if we go to heaven or wherever, it's all just a fleeting appearance. It's nothing. Whatever, as Bhagavan said, whatever appears has to disappear. Whatever comes into existence will cease to exist. So the only thing that is real, the only thing that is eternal, is what has always existed and therefore will always exist, namely our own being, I am. Therefore, the practical implication, the practical teaching to take from all this is, therefore, since everything else is just an unreal appearance, a mere superimposition, we should hold on to what is real. So long as we hold on to the appearance, to the superimposition, we face all sorts of troubles. So long as we mistake the snake, the rope to be a snake, we have fear. When we see the rope as it is, that it's just a harmless rope, our fear goes. Likewise, all desires, attachments, suffering, everything occurs only because of this superimposition. I said one thing about superimposition earlier, and that is something that is superimposed on another thing. It never completely conceals, it never completely hides the thing it's superimposed upon, but it obscures it. It makes it appear to be something else. And another thing about another thing about a superimposition, the superimposition always seems to be real. So long as we take what is unreal to be real, we are caught in trouble, because what is real will be permanent. So if we take things in this world to be real, we are relying upon them as if they're permanent. That is, we all spend our life trying to achieve things, trying to achieve happy relationships, trying to achieve material prosperity, friends, loved ones, relatives, maybe a little bit of name and fame, maybe some learning, maybe, if we're very ambitious, some political power, or whatever it is. Whatever we seek to achieve in this life, it's all fleeting. It's all going to go away. One day this body's going to die. So even if we become the richest person in the world, or the most powerful person in the world, how long is it going to last? That is this human life. At most we live 100 years or so. A few people maybe live to 110 or a little bit more. But it's all passing. It's all very fleeting. When we're young, our whole life seems to be ahead of us. But as the older we get, the more we see how quickly this life has slipped by. It seemed just like a few years ago that we were teenagers, and now we are 50 years, 60 years have passed. So it's all such a fleeting, transitory appearance. So trying to hold on to what is unreal, what is fleeting, what is impermanent, is a recipe for dissatisfaction. Nothing in this superimposed appearance will satisfy us. Satisfaction can be found only in what is real and eternal, namely our own being. So the wise course is to try as much as possible to hold on to what is permanent. Hold on to the base, the fundamental awareness I am, because that alone will give us lasting satisfaction, because that is what we actually are. Everything else appears and disappears. And whatever appears and disappears, it appears and disappears in our view. Since it appears and disappears in our view, it cannot be what we actually are. So even though this body now seems to be I, even though the mind and the intellect and the will seem to be identified with all these things, they all appear and disappear. In whose view? In our view. Since they appear and disappear in our view, they cannot be what we actually are. So who am I? We come back to we have to find out what we actually are. And we can find out what we actually are only by holding on to our own being, to this fundamental awareness I am.
Thank you, Michael. So the next question Whereas whenever I hear the term Sat Chit Ananda, because I am totally on board with reality, being, existence, consciousness, it's plain as day to me. At least I think it is. But I experience pretty much no bliss in my day-to-day life. There are joys, ups and downs, satisfied desires, small happiness, but bliss? Question mark. I do not even know the meaning of the word. I have often puzzled how it can be so obvious to me that there can be no experience without consciousness and vice versa. But when the great seers
No,
tell
no
me,
existence without consciousness and vice versa.
yeah, no existence without consciousness and vice versa. But when the great seers tell me that there is also an element of bliss, which is one and the same as the other two, I am puzzled because I am almost always depressed and desperate and want this particular life to be over. How can I come to know the bliss element of Sat Chit Ananda? Because I'm very sad, stressed, and depressed, and it would be really neat to just be naturally happier. Question mark.
Right. Okay, this is a very good question. Firstly, Ananda is sometimes translated as bliss, but it can equally well be translated as happiness. In most contexts, it's better to translate it as happiness because when we hear the word bliss, it sounds like, well, I've never experienced bliss, but we've all experienced happiness, at least in little bits and pieces. Bliss is actually just a word that means very intense happiness. But coming to the question, Sat is referring to infinite being. Infinite means also eternal, because infinite means without any limits at all. So no limits in time or space or in any kind of limit. So we are infinite being. But when we rise as ego, we experience ourselves as a limited being. Our being seems to be limited to the extent of this body. So I'm this body, I'm not this table. And this body is limited not only in space, it occupies a very small, space within this vast space. It's also limited in time. It was born a few years ago, and sooner or later it's going to die. So it's limited in time, it's limited in space. And it's also limited in the sense that it is something separate from every other thing. So our being is limited. Likewise, our awareness. Chit means infinite awareness. But so long as we experience ourselves as I am this body, we seem to have a very limited view. We know some things, we don't know other things. So our awareness seems to be limited. Likewise, Ananda seems to be limited. We experience little bits of happiness here and there, mixed up with all sorts of sorrows and sufferings and everything. So these are all, that is, what we actually are is infinite Satchitananda, infinite being, infinite awareness, and infinite happiness. But because we've limited ourselves at the extent of this body, we seem to have limited our existence. So now I exist. Before this body was born, I didn't exist. After this body dies, I won't exist. So it seems to be. Because if I am this body, I came into existence when this body came into existence, and I will cease to exist when this body ceased to exist. But am I this body? That's a question. Likewise with awareness. Awareness seems to be limited. It seems that we know some things, we don't know other things. So there seems to be a limitation on awareness. I'm aware of some things, I'm not aware of other things. I'm aware that Washington is the capital of the United States. If I'm asked what is the capital of a particular state, Kentucky. I don't know what the capital is. So I'm aware of the capital of the US, but I'm not aware of the capital of every state in the US. So we have awareness and unawareness. So we always have, when we limit ourselves, we have the opposites. There's existence and non-existence, awareness and non-awareness. Likewise, happiness and misery. So these are all due to limitation. But if we remove all limitations, what remains is infinite being, infinite awareness, and infinite happiness. So why should we believe that happiness is our real nature? Bhagavan has explained this very nicely in the first paragraph of Nana. What he says in the first paragraph is, since all beings like or love to be happy always without what is called misery. That is, we all are aware of this. We can see it in ourselves, we can see it in others. Everyone wants to be happy. And nobody wants to be miserable. So we always want to be happy without any misery. In other words, we want unqualified happiness. That's the first clause. Second clause, he says, since for everyone the greatest love is only for oneself. That is, however much we love other people or other things, we love them for the sake of ourselves. Because they seem to contribute to our happiness, we love them. If we believe someone is can make us happy, we love them. But if we find out that instead of making us unhappy, they make us unhappy, instead of making us happy, they make us unhappy, then our love for them will diminish. So the love is all centered around the love that we have for ourselves. And for ourselves, we love to have happiness. So that's the second clause. Since for everyone, the greatest love is only for oneself. And then very important third clause. And since happiness alone is the cause for love, that is, we only love those things which make us happy or which we think will make us happy. I'm not very satisfied with my car. My neighbor's got a better car. So if I get a better car like my neighbors, then I'll be happy. So we have liking for that better car because we think it will make us happy. If we saw that though our neighbor has a better car, he's still miserable, maybe we'll have second thoughts. Maybe getting a better car is not going to make me happy. But so long as we believe that getting a better car will make us happy, we have liking for that better car. When we get that better car, we'll still be dissatisfied. So we'll think we want some better car. Or maybe happiness doesn't lie in cars. Maybe I need to get myself a private aeroplane or a yacht or something. So we naturally love those things which make us happy. If our parents, for example, are very kind and loving to us, we will naturally love them because they're contributing to our happiness. But supposing some children are unfortunate to be born to parents who are very unkind and unloving, the parents constantly ill-treat the children, then the children won't have love for their parents. It's like that with all relationships. We have a husband or wife. So long as our husband or wife is making us happy, or at least seems to have the potential to make us happy, we love them. But if they're constantly giving us trouble, if they're constantly quarreling with us and giving us problems, then our love for them will naturally diminish. So as Bhagavan, this is a very important principle. Happiness alone is the cause for love. And Bhagavan doesn't mention it here, but elsewhere he mentions that but love is the cause for happiness. That is, if we love something, we'll be happy when we get it. If I love to have a better car, when I get that better car, at least temporarily I'll be happy. Oh, what I've wanted all this time I've now got. So we'll be happy. So happiness and love, each is the cause for the other. So, since we all have greatest love for ourselves, why do we love ourselves? Because happiness is our real nature. That is what Bhagavan is implying here. But then he goes on to say, so he's given three reasons. Since all sentient beings, all jivas, like to be always happy without what is called misery, since for everyone the greatest love is only for oneself, and since happiness alone is the cause for love, in order to obtain that happiness, which is one's swabhava, one's own being, one's very being is happiness. And then he gives another reason, which one experiences daily in sleep. Sleep here means dreamless sleep. That is, we, throughout the waking and dream state, we are constantly seeking things that we think will contribute to our happiness. We want more money, we want more loving, we want our relationships to be more loving, we want more learning, we want more of this, we want more of that, thinking these things are going to make us happy. But in sleep, we are bereft of all these things. There's not even a mind in sleep, but we're happy. So what does that indicate? When everything is taken away from us in sleep, we're perfectly happy. Happiness is our real nature. So this is another reason he gives. So he says, in order to obtain that happiness, which is one's svabhava, one's own being, which one experiences daily in sleep, which is devoid of mind. That is, there's no mind in sleep, but we are happy. So that indicates that we ourselves are happiness. So in order to obtain that happiness, he ends by saying, oneself knowing oneself is necessary. In other words, it's necessary for us to know what we actually are. What we actually are is happiness. There's so much evidence for the fact that our real nature is happiness. The most powerful evidence is that we're perfectly happy in sleep without anything. How can we be happy in sleep if our happiness depended on things other than ourselves? When everything is taken away from us, as in sleep, when we alone remain, we're happy. What does that mean? Happiness is our real nature. Why we experience dissatisfaction, the words he uses here for happiness and misery are sukha and dukkha. Another way we can translate sukha and dukkha are sukha is happiness or satisfaction. Dukkha is misery or dissatisfaction. So long as we rise as ego, we are dissatisfied. Why are we dissatisfied? Because our real nature is infinite happiness. What we actually are is infinite happiness. When we limit ourselves as this person we seem to be, this body consisting of 5 sheaths, we cannot find satisfaction because our real nature is infinite happiness. When we limit ourselves as this limited person that we seem to be, how can we experience unlimited happiness? It's impossible. In order to experience unlimited happiness, we need to be unlimited. We need to be infinite. So the very nature of ego is dissatisfaction. And the word for dissatisfaction is dukkha, which is the opposite of sukha. So we court dissatisfaction. We create dissatisfaction by rising as ego. So because as soon as we rise as ego, we find we are lacking happiness. We don't have we don't experience the infinite happiness that we all desire. Since we seem to be lacking that happiness, it seems that happiness is not in ourselves, it must be in other things. So if I get this car, if I have this tasty meal, if I have a very sweet-natured wife or husband, if I have good, kind, loving parents, if I have well-behaved children, if I have a good job, if I earn lots of money, if I achieve this, if I achieve that, I'll be happy. We're all looking for happiness in things other than ourselves. Why? Because the happiness seems to be lacking in ourselves. But what Bhagavan teaches us, what all the sages teach us, the reason we have never found happiness is we're looking in the wrong in the wrong place. The happiness doesn't lie outside in other things. Happiness lies in ourself. We ourselves are infinite happiness. So in order to know in order to experience infinite happiness, all we need to do is to be aware of ourselves as we actually are. So he ends this paragraph by saying, for that is for knowing oneself and thereby experiencing the infinite happiness, which is our own real nature, for that, Jnana-vichara, called Who Am I, alone is the principal means. Jnana-vichara means awareness investigation. That is, we have to investigate this fundamental awareness, I am. So happiness is our real nature. We seem to, we cannot experience that infinite happiness so long as we rise as ego. Just like we cannot experience infinite being or infinite awareness so long as we rise as ego, thereby limiting ourselves. So all we need to do to experience the infinite being, infinite awareness, and infinite happiness, which is our own real nature, is to cast off all these limitations, to cease identifying the body as I. How to cease identifying the body as I? The ego is that which is aware of itself as I am this body, which is a false awareness. Since false awareness is the problem, it can be removed only by correct awareness. So only by being aware of ourselves as we actually are can we experience the infinite happiness that is our own real nature. Otherwise, we are all dissatisfied. Nobody is satisfied. Whatever we achieve in this world, it might give us a fleeting little satisfaction. When I get that car I was hankering for, I'm satisfied for a few days until I see that another neighbor has got an even better car and then I want that. So that is, we are always dissatisfied. Even if we've got the best car in the world, the best, finest yacht, the most beautiful plane, we'll still be dissatisfied. Even if we've got hundreds of billions of dollars, there are few people in this world now who actually have hundreds of billions of dollars, they're still not satisfied. So we cannot, even if we go to the highest heaven and experience the most extraordinary blisses, we'll still be dissatisfied because it's all limited. It's all finite. Whereas the happiness that is our own real nature is infinite. So if we want to experience that infinite happiness, we need to know who am I. We need to be aware of ourselves as we actually are. So I hope that adequately answers that question. Does anyone have any questions on this?
Can we also ask who is feeling that unhappiness? Who is that saying within us?
Yeah. It's not a matter of just asking that any question that directs our attention back to ourselves is useful. But asking the question is not self-investigation. Fixing our attention on ourselves in order to see what we actually are, in order to be aware of ourselves as we actually are, that is self-investigation. So yes, asking, reminding ourselves, who is it who's dissatisfied? Or who is it who desires satisfaction? All these are useful questions, but we should follow up on them. We can't get, no verbal answer will satisfy us. If we want to know who is dissatisfied, we need to turn our attention back within to see what we actually are. Then the one who is dissatisfied, namely ego, will disappear, and the underlying reality, the base, I am, alone will remain. Because ego is just a superimposition upon that base. So long as we see the snake, we feel the fear. But the only way to get rid of that snake, and thereby get rid of the fear, is to look at the snake very carefully. If we look at the snake very carefully, what do we see? Oh, it's not a snake, it's just a rope. Then the fear goes away. Likewise, so long as we rise as ego, so long as we mistake ourselves to be a person, we will be dissatisfied. If we turn our attention back to ourselves to see am I really this person? If not, then what am I? Then we will see what we actually are. As soon as we are aware of ourselves as we actually are, for false awareness, I am this body will be destroyed. And then we will experience the happiness that is our very being.
Thank you, Michael. The next question we have is from Paula. I know or understand who and what I am. Is it allowable to ask why? Why the human experience?
When we say we know or understand, that is our knowledge of what we are is very superficial. It's an idea. We have an idea. Though I seem to be this body, this is not what I actually am. What I actually am is infinite Satchidananda. But that's just an idea. That's not our experience. We can say I understand that, but we still experience ourselves as this body. Sorry, what was the question? I've forgotten the question now.
Yeah, is it allowable to ask why this human
Why?
experience?
Yes. You can certainly ask why if you want, but you won't find any satisfactory answer. Because it is like, Bhagavan said, it is like asking, why was the son of a barren woman born? How was he born? There's no such thing as the son of a barren woman, because if a woman is barren, that means she has no son or daughter. So the son of a barren woman is like a square circle. Why is the circle square? If you ask that question, it's certainly permissible to ask that question, but you won't get any sensible answer because you're asking about something which doesn't actually exist. So Bhagavan said, rather than asking how this ego came into existence, why did this ego come into existence, first find out what is this ego. If you find out what is ego, you'll find there's no such thing at all. It has never come into existence. So asking why and how they're not productive questions because we're asking about something that isn't real. First, find out what is this ego. If we investigate this ego to find out what it actually is, we will find there's no such thing as ego at all. Just like, why is this snake lying on the path? Rather than asking that question, first look at it carefully and see, is this a snake or is it something else? If we look at it carefully enough, we'll see, oh, it's not a snake, it's just a rope. Then the question, why is this snake here, doesn't arise. Because there's no such thing, there is no snake there to ask any such question, about which to ask any such question.
Thank you, Michael.
And
The next question.
moreover, merely asking questions, it's useful to question, who am I, what am I, in order to gain a clear understanding, but we are not this body, we are the underlying being, the underlying awareness. But merely asking the question isn't going to solve our problem. We have to investigate and experience what we actually are. We can experience what we actually are only by turning our attention within and holding on to our own being.
Thank you.
Right.
The next
Is it
question we
clear?
have
Is it clear what I said?
Yes, I'm clear on that.
Right.
It's just like I do, it's more than just a no understanding. I know what you've been teaching through Sri Ramana's teachings, but I don't understand I still have to struggle with pain. And
with hate.
Pain.
Pain, yes.
I'm not talking about physical pain. I'm talking about the pain of experience as a human.
Yeah, yes.
And so that's why I'm asking why.
To rise as ego is painful. We don't experience any pain in any physical or mental pain or emotional pain in sleep. But as soon as we rise as ego, we experience these things in the waking and dream state. So the pain, our real nature is infinite happiness, but we experience this pain because we've risen as ego. So let us find out what we actually are, and the pain will disappear forever. Until then, pain is something we all have to live with.
Is that possible?
It is possible, yes. The only reason we don't know what we are is because we're still attached to this false identity. We're still not willing to let go, to surrender ourselves completely. Bhagavan says knowing ourselves is extremely easy. Then why does it seem difficult for all of us? Because we are not yet willing to pay the price. We're not yet willing to, until we are willing to give up our false identity and everything that goes along with it, we cannot know what we actually are.
Are you talking about dying?
I'm not talking about death of the body, because death of the body is just like the ending of a dream. The problem is not the dream, but the dreamer. So long as the dreamer exists, when one dream comes to an end, another dream will begin. The dreamer is ego. So the only real death is the death of ego. We have experienced so many bodies as I. All those bodies have died, and this will continue. It will be dreaming one life after another until we know what we actually are. When we know what we actually are, then ego will die. So we are on a suicide mission, but not to kill this body, because killing this body won't solve anything. What's the use of waking up from a dream when you wake up into another dream? So it's not killing the body, but killing the I that is aware of itself as I am this body. That is what needs to be killed.
And that's through self-investigation.
Through self-investigation and self-surrender, which are two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Because to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, we as ego subside. So the most effective way to surrender ourselves is to investigate ourselves. In fact, we cannot surrender ourselves completely without investigating ourselves. That is, without being self-attentive.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yes. Until then, we have to live with the fact that this life, this is samsara. Samsara means that. It means that the misery of embodied existence. And it's good to recognize there's some people who live in a fool's paradise. Oh, I'm okay. I've got enough money. I've got a nice family. I've got this. I've got that. I don't have any major problems. But they forget that the days are passing, and sooner or later this body is going to go. And there's no guarantee. We may have lots of money in the bank today. Tomorrow it may all be gone. We may have a healthy body today. Tomorrow we may end up in ICU because of diagnosis of some severe illness or an accident or anything. So nothing is secure in this bodily life. The only thing that is certain, if we take the body to be I, this body is certainly going to die. So that's the only certainty in this bodily life. But the real certainty is I am. Because whether the body appears or disappears, whether it's born or dies, the one thing that is constant throughout all our experience is our fundamental awareness I am. Everything else is a superimposition upon that. And what is superimposed is unreal. The base I am alone is real.
Yeah, I understand all that, honestly.
Yes. But this is Bhagavan's teaching is actually very simple. It's very easy for us to understand, but we must have the love to put it into practice.
And you're talking about doing what?
Attending to ourselves, giving up our attachment, our desire for anything other than ourselves. And we can't give it up all at once. We have to wean our mind off its desires and attachments. And the way to wean our mind off its desires and attachments to things other than ourselves is to hold on to ourselves, to be self-attentive, and thereby subside more and more and more.
Are you talking meditation?
Meditation is what does meditation mean? There are so many different types of meditation. This is a type of meditation, but it's not a meditation on anything other than ourselves. It's meditation on ourself alone, on our own being.
Right.
All other forms of meditation, there's an object of meditation. We're meditating on something other than ourselves. In this, we're not meditating on anything other than ourselves. We're meditating on ourself alone, our own being.
I appreciate you answering. I know you've answered the same questions over and over.
Don't worry. By answering these questions, I'm benefited as much or more than anyone else, because I'm constantly reminding myself of this. Because otherwise, the nature of the mind is going outward, seeking things in the world. So we need to constantly din into ourselves the need to be self-attentive, to hold on, to not for a moment forget our own being.
Okay. Thank you.
Michael, can I ask a follow-up question? If you don't mind?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, so like, even when one understands this, right? Even I can even say know it, right? So, for example, when you say the whole world coming through the senses, it is just but the thought in the mind, right? If you close your eyes, the only thing, if you see a red flower, only thing you see is the color red and the form of red.
Yes.
The fact that it's a flower is coming from the mind. Most of it is coming from the mind. So that part is pretty clear. But if you go deeper, I almost feel like there are two things. One is there is a very deep sense of I, very subtle, all day long. It stays with you all day long. There is a sense of I'm doing this. And even when somebody says, who's asking the question? Ananta is asking the question. That's also a thought. That's not really the I. The
Yes.
I is actually a very subtle thing that stays with me from the time I wake up till the time I go back to sleep. And
not only throughout the waking and dream state, even in sleep.
Exactly.
You say till I go to sleep, so there's still I in sleep.
Exactly. But the thing is, when everyone says the true nature is behind that, because all of this is not the true nature, because I'm able to perceive it. So if I'm able to perceive it, it's definitely not the true nature, right?
Yeah.
So how do I go beyond it? So that's why I was asking the question, like, where it's almost like we talk about the snake and the rope, but I have not seen the rope all my life. Like, it almost feels like the snake is eating the rope.
You have never seen anything other than the rope. But on top of that rope, you've superimposed an idea. This is a snake. But even when you think it is a snake, it's only a rope.
Okay.
So the ground, the adhisthana, the adhara, the base reality is our own being. I am. So there's never a moment when we're not aware of our own being. The only trouble is we have conflated our being with a set of adjuncts. Anant is the name of a person. You take this person to be I. So I and Anant have got conflated, just like the snake and rope have got conflated. So the way to get rid of the snake is to look at it very carefully. Because when we look at it very carefully, we see it's not a snake, it's just a rope. Likewise, the way to get rid of this false identification, I am Anant, is to attend to I am. Anant will drop off and the pure I am alone will remain. It is so, so simple. But though it is simple, it requires supreme love because we need to be willing to give up everything. Bhagavan says in verse 26 of Ulladu, if ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Ego itself is everything. Therefore, investigating what it is giving up everything. Investigating what it is means investigating what this ego is. If we investigate ego, ego will subside and everything else will subside along with it. So since it's giving up everything, it requires supreme love. We need to be willing to sacrifice everything for this.
Because when I meditate and ask for where is Anant, there's no Anant, right? If I really go deep, there's no such person because
Anant seems to exist so long as you allow your attention to go outwards. But don't worry about Anant. You're not investigating Anant. Yes. You're investigating I. Who is the I who feels I am Anant? And if we hold on to that I, Anant will drop off and the pure I alone will remain.
Right. So in meditation, like I know, like Bhagavan says, Summa Ira, right? So I don't meditate. Like I've been to Tiruvannamalai, all in the caves and stuff. Wherever, I just stay there with attention because there's nothing else you can do, really, right? So yes. you just stay there and be attentive to all the things that goes on. But really speaking, I mean, if everything is superimposition, there's really nothing else the mind can do because mind itself is a superimposition.
Yes. But, well, one thing the mind can do, it can attend to its own essence, its own being. That's not actually a doing, it's just being. It's summa irupadu. That is summa iru means just be. What does it mean to just be? We always are. There's never a moment when we are not. But why summa iru? Summa means without, what it implies is be without rising. Ego is arising. It's when ego arises, everything arises. It's the root of all arisings. So long as even when we rise as ego, we don't cease to be, but we're no longer just being. We're being plus rising. So we need to put an end to the rising of ego. Bhagavan expresses it beautifully in verse 27 of Ulladu. Nanu diado ullanile, namaduvai ullanile. The state in which I is without rising is the state in which we are as that meaning Brahman. So in order to experience ourselves as Brahman, as what we actually are, we need to be without rising. So how to be without rising? He says in the next verse, in the next sentence, Nan udikum tanam ade nadamo. Without investigating the place where I rises, nanudia tan irupe savadu evan. How to reach or attain the destruction of oneself in which I does not rise. So when he says, without investigating the place where I rises, what is the place from which I rises? Only from our own being. So he implies, without investigating our being, the source from which we have risen as ego, how to attain the annihilation of ourself, which is the state in which I never rises. And without attaining that, Saramal, tan aduam, tan nilail, nipadu evan. How to stand in one's own state. In Tannile means one's own natural state, one's real nature, in which oneself is that, in which we are Brahman. So he makes it very, very clear here what is meant by Summa Irapadu. Summa Irapadu is that state, is the Nanudiya Ulanile, the state of being without rising. And we can achieve that state only by investigating our being, the place from which we've risen, the source from which we've risen.
Thank you, Michael. Really, really appreciate everything you do.
Well, it's all Bhagavan's, and it's just pointing out what Bhagavan has taught us.
Yes.
Bhagavan has made it so, so simple.
Thank you, Mike. Next question we have is from Robert. I read something Sadhu Om may have written in Sadhana Saram. Grace alone is of prime importance. Would you mind commenting upon this? Thank you.
Yes, that is the nature of ego, is going outwards, clinging to things other than itself. As Bhagavan says in verse 25 of Uludunapadu, grasping form, it comes into existence. Grasping form, it stands. Grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes abundantly. Leaving form, it grasps form. So the very nature of ego is to grasp form. Ego has no form of its own. That's why the same verse he described is that Uruvatra Payahande, the formless demon ego. It's got no form of its own. So whatever form it clings to, things other than itself. So the very nature of ego is to cling to things, hold on to things other than itself. In other words, to be aware of things other than itself. Since such is the case, it is not the nature of ego to have love to turn within. The nature of ego is to always seek to hold on to things other than itself. Because it cannot come into being, it cannot stand, it cannot endure, and it cannot flourish without constantly holding on to things other than itself. So, attachment is the very nature of ego. So, the love to turn within, from where can it come? It cannot come from ego because it's contrary to the nature of ego. It can come only from our own being. And our own being is not only infinite being, infinite awareness, infinite happiness, it's also infinite love. So Bhagavan is our very own being. Because he's our own being, he doesn't see us as the person we take ourselves to be. He sees us as we actually are. In other words, he sees us as not other than himself. Because he sees us as not other than himself, he loves us as himself. And that infinite love that he has for us as himself is what we experience as his grace. So it's only from that grace that we can get the love to turn back within. Grace is not something, Bhagavan used to say, grace is not something that's going to descend from heaven. Grace is ever present in your heart as your own being. So it's only by that grace that we can gain the love to turn within. Though grace is pure being, by being as it is slowly rectifying our mind. It's That is our prarabdha, our destiny. The fruits of our past actions are allotted to us by grace. So without doing anything, grace is doing everything that is necessary. So it's slowly, slowly kindling the love in our heart. But we need to cooperate with that grace. That is, as Bhagavan used to say, grace is not something that comes from outside, it comes from within. So grace has to work through us. So it works through us. That is, when we make effort to try to turn within, to be self-attentive, that very effort is the result of grace. That is, it is grace that has given us the love to try to be self-attentive. So, as Bhagavan often used to say, grace is the beginning, the middle, and the end. It's grace that draws us to this path. It's grace that guides us and motivates us to follow this path. And it is grace that will finally swallow us. So ultimately, all is grace. Is that a clear answer?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So the next question we have is, hello Michael, have you come across the book titled Aham Spurana, Scintillations of Jnana from Sri Ramana Maharishi, authored by Ganapati Iyer? It is based on Ganapati Iyer's personal diary, which documents his experience staying with Bhagavan in 1936. Could you share your thoughts on it, please?
Yes. This so-called manuscript first appeared as a on Amazon as a PDF ebook. It was full of all sorts of portions of it looked as if they looked plausible. They looked as if they could be conversations with Bhagavan. But many things in it were very, very clearly complete fabrication. I mean, there were things in it that were so obviously false. Then there's a person called John David. He's some sort of I think he's one of the many disciples of Punja. And he set himself up as a guru, and he has some group, and there's so many of these would-be gurus. So after this book had been out after this PDF ebook had been out for some time, and in the meanwhile, friends of mine in the ashram and also other people made very careful investigation. And it's almost certain there was never any such person as Ganapati Iyer. There's absolutely no record of him. And some of that book contained some things. For example, it contained what purported to be Mrs. Pigot's diary. Mrs. Pigot is mentioned in talks. And it claims that this is that they have that they got the original manuscript of Mrs. Pigot's diary. Actually, in the ashram archive, there are some notebooks by Mrs. Pigot, which are not corresponding with what's in this book. So it's almost certain there's so much evidence that this book is a complete fabrication. But anyway, this person, John David, he wrote to me saying that he had got permission to publish this book, and he was editing it, and he wanted my help. He wanted my advice. So I told him, this is almost 100% certain this is a complete fabrication. There are so many things in it that cannot be true. And then he said, I know some bits aren't true, but there's a lot of very good material which I've been told is authentic, because he had somehow contacted the person who produced all this, who many people tried to contact him. He was being very evasive. But anyway, this John David claimed that he had permission to edit it and publish it as a book. I strongly advised him. I said, this will do a disservice to Bhagavan's devotees, because this is this is claiming to be from Bhagavan, but it's not from Bhagavan. I mean, this is not, these conversations that are recorded there almost certainly never took place. This person, Ganapati Iyer, there almost certainly was no such person. But he went, because he saw a commercial opportunity, he went ahead and published it, and as a book. And so I think it's selling on Amazon. But it's almost certainly a complete fabrication.
Thank you, Michael. The next question we have is from Sanjay Lohia. Michael, you know the inner significance of many of the stories in Ramayana and Mahabharata. In Mahabharata, we know that Draupadi was married to all 5 Pandava brothers. Why would she or any other woman give her consent to be married to 5 men simultaneously? Is there any inner significance to all this? Thank you.
There's well, the story is there in Mahabharata, how it happened. I haven't really thought about it, what inner significance there is. I think sometimes there are different, I think one explanation that is sometimes given is that the Pandavas represent the 5 senses, and the one mind is married to the 5 senses. They're different. There's so many ways we can use our imagination to explain it in so many ways. But that was just how it was part of the story. How she came to be married to them, it's also part of the story. There are certain communities in India, and also I think in Tibet, where it's polygamy was certainly widely practiced, particularly among rich people in India. Rich men or kings often have more than one wife. So that's called polygamy. There's also polyandry, which is one woman having many husbands or more than one husband. That is not uncommon. There are certain communities in India and also in Tibet where, according to the circumstances, there's sometimes social reasons. That is, according to the circumstances in which different communities live. For example, in Tibet, it's very challenging. It's not an easy environment in which to survive. So it was sometimes advantageous for a woman to marry 2 brothers, so that there'd be two men to look after, to help manage the household. So it's not a completely unusual thing, but it's not very common in the Puranas and Ityasas. We don't find it very often. Draupadi was an exception, but there's a story behind it. But we don't have, I mean, there may be so many, like saying the one mind and the 5 senses, there may be so many ways of explaining this. But why should we question why Draupadi had 5 husbands? What about Dasaratha? He had 3 wives. We don't quite, we accept it when a man marries 3 wives, but you don't accept it when a woman marries more than one husband. So it's all different circumstances, different social customs are there. But that is not the, I mean, there may be some very nice explanations that I'm not aware of or that I don't remember, but we don't have to be too concerned about these details. The overall story, I mean, there are so many important lessons we can learn from the story.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Michael, in the previous question about Aham's Purana book, I think the author was Gajapati Iyer.
Gajapati, yes, you're right. But as I say, he was almost certainly a fictitious, I mean, it's almost certainly a complete fabrication.
Sure. Thank you, Michael. The next question we have is from Manik. Is it okay to have worldly goals, as in trying to achieve something beyond what is necessary for our day-to-day survival? Question mark.
We- whatever we if we whatever we desire and whatever we make effort to achieve will bring about results. It won't bring about immediate results, because what we are destined to experience in this lifetime is predetermined. When this body comes into existence, it's already decided. Our prarabdha is already decided. But if we desire certain things and make effort for them, that will create fresh agamya, and the fruit of that agamya, well, I mean, will not create fresh agamya. That is agamya. The effort we make to achieve what we desire is called agamya. That agamya will give fruit, which that fruit will be added to sanchita, and it may later be allotted to us as prarabdha. So desiring anything is foolishness. What is that's part of the reason why we are taught the law of karma. But as Bhagavan said very clearly to his mother, whatever endrum naduvadu, envechikanum naduvadu. What is never to happen will not happen in spite of any amount of effort. Nadapadu entadeseinum niladu. What is to happen will not stop in spite of any amount of obstruction. Iduve tinnam. Ahalim monamayirike nandru. Therefore, being silent is good. So Bhagavan gives us advice there. That the clear implication is it's foolish to try to achieve anything according to our desires. What we are going to experience in this lifetime, we are going to experience. What we're not going to experience, we're not going to experience. This is certain. So why to set ourselves goals, seek to achieve things? We are just creating more karma and thereby immersing ourselves more and more in the bondage of karma. We are here to, if we are wise, we should be seeking to free ourselves from the bondage of karma. But the question was, is it okay? Yes, it's okay. If you want to, you can try to seek anything, but you'll have to experience the consequences of that in the form of a karma pala, not in this lifetime, but in some other lifetime. So why to seek to achieve anything when we know whatever we achieve is not going to give us happiness? Happiness is our own real nature. So only by knowing ourselves as we actually are, being aware of ourselves as we actually are, will we attain the infinite satisfaction, the infinite happiness that we are all seeking. But we have been given freedom. We have freedom to try to achieve anything we want, but it's not a wise use of our freedom. The wise way to use our freedom is to turn our attention within, to know who am I.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, even to have desires, or even if we say I don't want to have desire, even that is like an agamya, like it's again something outward. So instead of looking at anything outward, we can just focus.
Well, to whom are all these desires? That is, so long as we rise as ego, there will be desire to a greater or lesser extent. But so long as we have strong desires, we can never know ourselves. We will not be willing to surrender ourselves, and therefore we cannot know ourselves as we actually are. So by the practice of self-investigation and self-surrender, we are trying to wean our mind off its desires and attachments. We cannot completely free ourselves from desires and attachments so long as we rise as ego, but we have to reduce the strength of our desires and attachments to a considerable extent in order to be willing to surrender ourselves.
Sure. Thank you, Michael.
So we should be, the only desire we should have is to give up desire. Not that we shouldn't have desire to fulfill any other desire.
So the next question is, in spite of understanding Bhagavan's teaching and also imbibing them, why is it that we tend to forget it while we are in a debate with someone? We know that there is no need to prove ourselves as there is no ego, but we still end up forgetting the basic teachings and end up trying to prove ourselves right. My question is, how should we remember to remember Bhagavan's main teachings?
This is what is called pramada. Pramada means inattentiveness or negligence. Because we are not focused on holding on to self-attentiveness, we tend to lose our hold on self-attentiveness. And once we lose our hold on self-attentiveness, we get carried away by our vasanas. And when we're carried away by our vasanas, if we find someone who has a different opinion to our opinion, we want to assert our opinion and put down their opinion. Let anyone believe whatever they want. There's so many. Why are there so many different beliefs? Even in the name of religion or spirituality, there's so many beliefs, so many different types of beliefs. Bhagavan has taught us that we are not here to quarrel with others. Let anyone. That is the reason there are so many different beliefs out there, is that at different stages of spiritual development, different beliefs are appropriate. So at a certain stage in our spiritual development, it's appropriate to believe in an external God, a God in name and form, and to believe that doing japa and singing and dancing or whatever we may, that's appropriate for people who are doing that. But we have to go beyond that. But everyone, the same grace that is guiding us is guiding everyone at so it's giving us the appropriate guidance at the appropriate time. So it is just, it's ego that prompts us, ego and its vasanas that prompts us to want to engage in arguments with others. It's futile. People believe. You can never if someone doesn't want to believe something, however much you try to convince them, you won't be able to convince them. So we are here to follow what Bhagavan has taught us. That is why Bhagavan wrote 2 verses in Uludunaptu, verses 2 and 3. Bhagavan has emphasized that we are not here to quarrel with others. There's so many beliefs people have. Let them believe it. Sooner or later, they'll be dissatisfied, and then they'll go for something deeper. But we're not going, by our arguing with them, we're not going to change them. If we're out to try and change others, then we're just like missionaries, like religious zealots who try to convert everyone else to their own religion. That is not our aim. Our aim is to turn within. But because if we hold on to self-attentiveness, there'll be no inclination to quarrel with others. The inclination to quarrel with others or to try to convince others arises only when we lose our hold on self-attentiveness. So we need to cultivate more and more this practice of holding on to self-attentiveness. To the extent to which we hold on to self-attentiveness, we thereby subside. And then to the extent to which we subside, the inclination to convince anyone else or to persuade anyone else will also subside.
Thank you, Michael. The next question we have is from Anand. Bhagavan indicated that the desired practice is to just remain in being, which is probably not difficult, since that is basically our true nature, perhaps common to all sentient beings. It seems in that sense we have to be like animals, forget that we have an intellect and just remain as being. Example, when a dog looks at us, etc., it doesn't think it is a dog and it is seeing a man. It is just is and sees us that way. With that animal-like beingness, topped up with our human subtle directed power of attention, it becomes akin to choiceless awareness that Krishnamurti talked about and which Bhagavan also mentioned in one of his talks. Also, whether this primitive animal-like first-cut response to events and in general remaining like that when things or events don't require our active intervention. This kind of self-abidance, like animals, with a human on top directed power of attention without judging or evaluating, will it take us gradually to the 180-degree culmination of resting in pure beingness? Probably this was what Bhagavan meant by we should be going back the way we came, that is, going back to what we were before we started heaping all the intellectual baggage of a true self.
This is a very simplistic view of animals. Firstly, it is wrong to say animals don't have intellect. They may not use their intellect in the same way we use them. That is, they may not discuss philosophy and such things, but they have an intellect. A cow can tell the difference. It has the intellect to distinguish between edible plants and inedible plants. The intellect is just that ability to distinguish one thing from another. So animals have an intellect which they use suited to their own survival, just like we use our intellect suited to our survival. Animals are not just pure being. I mean, they're not just in a state of pure being. When a dog looks at you, the dog may be having some expectation that you're going to throw a stick or something, or that you want to play with it or something. Just like us, animals have likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, and so on. And they use their intellect to fulfill their desires. So then they're not much different to us. So to try to idealize animals and to say we should be like them, that is not the spiritual path. Just like us, the animals identify a body as I. The dog it may not think the thought, I am a dog, but it is experiencing that dog body as I. So it's no different to us. Just like we experience this human body as I, it experiences a dog body as I. It's so what Bhagavan is talking about is we're not trying to go back to some previous state of nature. We're trying to go back to our original being. Our original being is devoid of identification. That is, so long as the whole problem is our rising as ego, because the ego rises identifying itself as I am this body. That's what Bhagavan means in Ulladu Napadu, verse 25, when he says, Uru Patriundam, grasping form, it comes into being. Grasping form means, in that context, it means projecting and identifying a body as I. So grasping form, it comes into being. Grasping form, it stands. So without identifying a body as I, ego cannot rise or stand or endure. That doesn't mean the body exists prior to the rising of ego. That is, as soon as we rise as ego, we project the body and identify it as I. That body may be a human body, it may be a dog body, it may be a cow body, it may be an elephant body, it may be a fly or a flea or whatever it is. We take some body to be I. And having taken a body to be I, we don't stop with that. Our mind goes out through the five senses and we're constantly trying to experience things in the world. That's what he refers to in the third sentence. Grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes abundantly. That is equally true of egos would identify a human body as I, as humans who identify a dog body or an elephant body or cow body or whatever. So the problem is our rising as ego. It's got nothing to do with what type of body we have, whether it's our body is a human body or a cow body. Or the ego, there's an I there that is aware of itself as I am this body. That is the problem. To overcome that problem, the only way is to hold on in that adjunct conflated awareness. I am this body. This body is unreal. What is real is only I am. So we need to hold on to I am. And to the extent to which we hold on to I am, the body will drop off. And when the body drops off, ego thereby subsides. Body drop off means the attachment to the body will decline. Ego will subside. And eventually, when we hold on to self-attentiveness firmly enough, ego will dissolve back into its source, and all phenomena which exist only in the view of ego, will be dissolved along with ego. So when Bhagavan said, go back the way you came, he didn't mean go back to being a dog or a cow or a horse or anything. He meant go back to your source, to your own being. The place from which we rose is our own being. I am. Go back to that. That's what he meant. So let's not read into Bhagavan's words meaning that he did not intend.
Thank you, Michael. The next question we have is from Sanjay Lohia. What is the difference? What is the difference between sattva gunas and sat guna? Sadhu Om uses both these terms in verse 47 of Sadhane Saram. Thank you.
Sattva literally means beingness. Sat means being. I'd have to see the verse to see. It's probably he's using it as a synonym. But I'd have to see the verse to be sure.
I can read it out. I can read out the verse.
Okay.
If you want, I can read out. Yes. So it's a slightly longish verse. So if one wishes to attain all the elevated and pure qualities, sattva gunas, by training the mind, one will certainly fail in one's attempts, no matter how long one may try. But if one takes to the practice of self-attention, which will destroy the mind, and if one thereby transcends the three ordinary qualities, that is purity, sattva, activity, rajas, and inertia, tamas, the true quality of abiding steadfastly as the reality, satguna, will automatically shine forth and flourish in one. And in the outlook of others, one will then appear to be endowed with all pure sattvic qualities. So my doubt is in this satguna. Why does Sadhu Om use for the reality satguna?
He's talking. If we need to see beyond the words to see what the words are pointing out. That is, being is not a quality. Sat is not a quality, is not a guna. But we can metaphorically refer to it as a guna. So if we practice just being by holding on to self-attentiveness, ego will dissolve, and all the gunas which belong to ego will also dissolve along with it. But as he says, in the view of others, we will appear to be endowed with sattva guna. That is, sattva, rajas, and tamas are all qualities of prakriti. So even even sattva, which is the quality of beingness, it's the purest and best guna, but it still belongs to Prakriti. Whereas the quality of just being, the Sat Guna, it doesn't belong to Prakriti, it belongs to the underlying reality. Ramakrishna used to tell a story about the three thieves. A man was a traveler, was passing through a forest, and he was attacked by three thieves, and they stole all his things. And one of them said, "Let us kill him, because if he survives, he may go to the police and report us." That one who said, "Let's kill him," that is the tamoguna. Then the second one said, "No, let's not kill him. That's not good to kill him. Let's just tie him, bind him. Then he won't be able to escape. Let him just die a natural death." So that is rajaguna. So then they tied him and they left. But then the third thief came back, and he untied him, took him to the edge of a forest and said, "Here's the edge of a forest. You go, this road will lead you back to your village." And that man was so grateful. He said, "You've saved my life. Please come with me to my home. I'll welcome you to my home." And that third thief said, "No, I am also a thief. I cannot go beyond this point. I cannot leave the forest. You have to go. You have to go home on your own." That third one is sattva guna. So the sattva guna will take us to the edge. It will show us how to go beyond, but it cannot come with us. We have to leave even sattva guna behind.
So to call it Sat Guna, it is not exactly true. There's no guna there. Sat
Well,
Guna.
it depends how we understand. It's not a guna of, in the sense of a guna of prakriti.
Yeah.
Prakriti means the manifestation.
Yeah.
So it's nothing to do with prakriti, but it is
Yeah.
it is being itself is a quality. Sat itself is the ultimate quality. That is, we need to see beyond the words themselves to see what's being pointed at.
Yeah,
So
because I have not
the quality
seen
of just being.
Quality of just being. That's the easiest way to understand it.
Yeah.
Because I have not seen this term anywhere else.
Well,
This particular
it may occur in other places, or he may just have coined it, but it doesn't matter. We need to see understand what the word is, what the term is referring to.
Got it, sir. Got it, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, and in poetry, so many terms can be used, but that's why anything we read, we need to try to understand. We shouldn't just see the words. We should try to understand what the words are pointing at. Strictly speaking, it's not a guna in the sense, it's not a guna like the gunas of Prakriti. But it is a guna in another sense. It's just being is the highest of all qualities.
We have to see beyond the words.
Yes, well, we have to see what the words are pointing at. All words are pointing beyond themselves.
All words are pointing beyond themselves. We have to see the intended meaning.
If someone says eat an apple, it's not the word apple that we have to eat. That word apple is referring to some particular fruit. So like that, people often misunderstand by taking, like people say, Bhagavan often uses the term "I am." But it's not the words "I am" Bhagavan is talking about, or the word "I." He's talking about what that word refers to, which is our own being.
Got it, sir. Thank you.
So we should look upon all words as pointers and try to understand what they're pointing at.
What they are pointing at. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, man. I think you have answered Anand's question already, so I'll go to the next one. Next is from Colleen. Without a living guru to give us a mantra, how can we find the right one for ourselves?
What do we mean by a living guru? Do we mean, if we mean a living body, then a living body, the body is not the real guru. As Sadhu Om, when people use this term living guru, Sadhu Om, and asked Sadhu Om, is a living guru necessary? He said, yes, a living guru is absolutely necessary. But if by the term living guru, you mean a living body, then your living guru will one day become a dead guru. What is the use of such a guru? We need an ever-living guru. Bhagavan is such a guru. He is eternally living because he is our own reality. The term guru is understood differently by different people. The term guru is used in a very ordinary sense. For example, in most sampradayas, most traditions, they have what is called a parampara, a lineage of gurus. But there's a guru, and then he appoints a successor, and he appoints a successor. Or sometimes there's dispute among the followers as who is the rightful successor. All that is using the term guru in a very ordinary sense. When Bhagavan uses the term guru, he uses it in a much deeper sense. Bhagavan says in the 12th paragraph of Nana, he begins the 12th paragraph of Nana by saying, Kadavalum Guruvum Unmayal Verala. God and Guru are in truth not different. So we don't go looking for a living guru, a living God, because we know God is eternal. Likewise, Guru is eternal. Because our mind is outward going, it's often necessary for Guru, the eternal Guru, to appear outwardly in name and form, usually in the name and form of a person. So, for example, the eternal Guru appeared outwardly in the name and form of Bhagavan Ramana. But his primary teaching is, I am not this body. So we shouldn't, of course we have great love for the person that he seemed to be, but we also need to understand that he's in no way limited to that person. So if we are attracted to Bhagavan and his teachings, we don't need any other guru. So the problem of how can I find a guru doesn't arise for someone who is naturally drawn to Bhagavan. If we want a mantra, that is when a guru formally gives a mantra to a disciple, they will give the mantra. They will also explain the meaning of the mantra, often explain the meaning, the significance of each syllable of the mantra, or each group of syllables, and they will explain what is the benefit of repeating that mantra. That is the usual tradition when a mantra is given. So if you want a mantra, Bhagavan has given us a mantra. In verse 2 of Arunachala Navamanimalai, he has explained the meaning of Arunachala. He explains that the first three syllables, Aruna, it means Satya Chit Sukham. In other words, Satchidananda, being, awareness, happiness. That's what one meaning. Satya Chit Sukham Andri, also Paravue Sarayakam, the oneness of the Supreme and the Jiva. The one, in other words, Jiva Brahmaikya, the oneness of Jiva and Brahman. That's another meaning. And that Jiva Brahmaikya is the significance of the Mahavakya Tattvamasi. You are that. So it also, Aruna refers to all these. It refers to Satya Chidananda, it refers to Jiva Brahmaikya, and it refers to Tattvamasi. And achala means ganam. Ganam means what is solid, what is not solid in a physical sense, but what is very immovable, unshakable. In other words, our own being. That actually means immovable. So that is what the significance of achala. And he ends by saying, Muktinaneka varal arunachalam. That is arunachala, which bestows liberation when thought of. So any devotee of Bhagavan who wants a mantra and wants to have mantra diksha from Bhagavan, he's openly given mantra diksha to all of us. He hasn't called anyone and whispered in their ear some mantra. He proclaims it openly. Arunachala is a mantra, if you want a mantra. So, but if you're not attracted to the teachings of Bhagavan and you want some other guru, that's fine. I mean, maybe Bhagavan, because not everyone is drawn to Bhagavan. But if you're drawn to Bhagavan, you do not need any other guru. And if you want a mantra, Bhagavan has already given a mantra openly to all of us. And what is the fruit of that mantra? The highest fruit of all. Merely thinking of Arunachala will give liberation. So what better mantra can we think can be there?
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for your answer. I appreciate it.
Right.
Thank you, Michael. I think it's time, but do you want to take a few more questions?
If there are a few more questions, yes.
Yeah, there are a couple of, I think next one is a comment from Sai. It seems that the idea of snake superimposed on rope is itself a problematic metaphor, since both the snake and the rope are phenomena and both are superimpositions on reality.
Well, any analogy, there's no such thing as a perfect analogy. We should understand an analogy as an analogy. It is to illustrate. Certain things. So what the snake rope analogy illustrates is one thing being superimposed upon another, and it also, if we we can use the snake rope analogy in different ways. Often it is said the appearance of the world is like the snake, and the underlying reality, the rope, is Brahman. But we can also apply it in a deeper way, but the underlying reality is Brahman. That's common. But what is superimposed, the primary superimposition, is ego, the false awareness, I am this body. If we take it in that sense, then we can use that analogy in a different way. We can also say, just like if you want to get rid of that snake, the only way is to look at it very carefully, because if you look at it carefully, you'll see that it's not a snake but a rope. Likewise, if we want to get rid of the ego, all we need to do is to look at it very carefully. We'll see its underlying reality, which is Brahman, the pure awareness I am. So no analogy is meant to be perfect. It's to illustrate something. It's to help us to understand something. So we shouldn't. Every analogy has, of course, it has its limitations. Even in the sense in which I just took it then. But if you look at the snake very carefully, you'll see the underlying rope. People sometimes object to that. They say, but both the snake and the rope are objects. But self and that is our real nature, Brahman and ego, they're not objects. No, they're not objects. So that's not what it's meant to illustrate. It's illustrating that if we look at ego, the subject, the knower, very carefully, we'll see its underlying reality, which is the pure awareness I am.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, that's a nice explanation. But yeah, as you said, both are, observations, and that's why I felt it was it could be misleading, because again,
any words can be misleading. Any analogy can be misleading if it's misunderstood. That's why That is why we are taught in all the Vedanta scriptures, we need to do sravana. Sravana means we need to pay close attention to what is being taught. Literally, sravana means hearing, but it means hearing attentively, paying close attention to what is taught. Then we need to do manana. We need to make sense of it. So why is this? We need to consider this, for example, the snake rope analogy. What is the significance of this? What are we expected to learn from this? So we need to make sense of the teachings, because many people hear the same teaching but understand it in different ways. As Bhagavan said, according to the purity of the antakarana, the inner instrument, the mind, the same teaching reflects in different ways. So we need to understand the teachings correctly. We need to understand what is the intent behind the teachings. What is the intended meaning? We shouldn't just go by the vachyartha, the mere meaning of the words. We need to understand the lakshyartha, the intended meaning. So we need to have a deep understanding of the teaching, and then we need to put it into practice. Putting it into practice is what is called nididhyasana. Nididhyasana means deep contemplation. Deep contemplation on what? On I. Because the primary teaching is you are that. So if we're taught you are that, what should we investigate? The reason we are taught you are that is to stop looking for that outside, to understand there's no that other than you. So who should you attend to? You should attend to yourself. Attend to I. But that's why during Bhagavan's lifetime, there were books written that misinterpreted his teachings. Bhagavan was least bothered because he knew those who are going to understand will understand. Those who are not going to understand will not understand. It's up to each one of us. We each have a responsibility to ourselves to pay close attention to what Bhagavan has actually taught us, not just rely upon what other people say he said, but what he himself has written his teachings. So we either need to, if we know Tamil, we need to read his teachings in the original. If we don't know Tamil, we need to find reliable translations. We need to read them. We need to make sense of them. We need to understand them for ourselves. We need to fully imbibe them. And most importantly of all, we need to put into practice by attending to ourselves. If we follow this path for some time, we will find over the years our understanding slowly develops, slowly deepens, slowly becomes clearer. This is the natural process. So when we first read Bhagavan's teachings, for example, if we first read Who Am I, we'll understand something. But the more we read it, the more we think about it, the more we put it into practice, the clearer and clearer it will become. The deeper and deeper the meaning and implication will become to us.
Thank you, Michael. If it is okay, I'll just ask one more question, and then
Yes.
we can. I have made a note of other questions, and we can ask it in the next meeting. So the next question is from Saujanya. How to prepare for the body's death? How to prepare oneself to stay with the I am in that moment?
Try to stay with I am at every moment. Death may come at any moment. We don't know. Death doesn't come. He doesn't send us advance warning, or sometimes we get advance warning. We may be told by the doctors that we've got advanced cancer or some other terminal illness. But for most of us, death doesn't come with a forewarning. So we should consider every moment to be potentially the moment of death. So we should try to attend to ourselves as much as possible. If we don't attend to ourselves during our life, we're not going to attend to ourselves when death comes. So we need to start now. We need to every moment of our life should be a preparation for death. And the best way to prepare for death is to attend to that which will never die, namely our own being, I am. Death will come to the body, that is certain. But there's something that will that endures, whether the body is alive or dead. That is our fundamental awareness, I am. That is what we need to try to hold on to as much as possible.